So this is a video I was really hoping I wouldn't have to make. I was hoping everything was going to go right, or at least well enough that I wouldn't have to share a video on lessons that we learned. And the reason I'm making this video is we recently had a death in the family due to cancer. And I'm going to state up front, I'm not a medical doctor or a medical professional in any way. I just wanted to, it's just my own opinion, and I wanted to share it, not as medical advice, but uh, just some things that might be helpful to you if you have a family member in that similar situation. So I hope it can just lead you to ask the right questions. And when our loved one got this diagnosis, we were getting encouraging signs, and we ended up being overly optimistic because we were told we caught it early. And our family member had also gotten over a different type of cancer previously with chemo and hadn't even lost her hair due to chemo in the first cancer fight. So they were screening her regularly because they wanted to make sure the original cancer hadn't come back. And at some point during these screenings, they found a tumor in her stomach. And looking back, this is the first thing that I wish we did differently. Even though they had found the tumor in her stomach, they were not quite sure where the tumor was, and they said it could be in her lower esophagus or stomach. And I now find this alarming. I wish we had very respectfully and courteously asked their team to perform more tests or scans to determine exactly where the cancer was. I can't see how you can have an effective treatment plan without knowing where the growths specifically are. Later on in the story, you will see that this is doubly important. It's key that you know that. And it also leads to another thing that we should have done differently at that time. So the treatment plan was to do a few rounds of chemo and then have a serious surgery which would have removed her stomach. This would have forced her to radically change her diet, but it would have removed the cancer. And at some point, the surgery was postponed for a few weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and that may not have been wise because this allowed the cancer to grow in 2 ways. Now, sometimes surgery isn't the best option, so it's something that you have to really ask a lot of questions about. So not just why, is it if you are going to go with surgery, if that is your least bad option or your best option, then it shouldn't have been delayed because when this person went in for the surgeon had to stop the surgery almost immediately because they noticed the cancer had spread. So the treatment options stopped, and it had just spread to other organs. And I don't know if this delay for 3 weeks had really allowed this cancer to spread that much on its own, but it could have been. The main problem was this delayed a biopsy that would have allowed the lab to identify there were other treatments to do besides chemo. Instead, chemo began shortly after that surgery was stopped, but we didn't find out until weeks later there was an additional treatment that could have been added to the chemo until I think the third chemo treatment after that. And this lost time, even though it was partially due to delaying the surgery, and even though it didn't seem like a very long delay, for some reason the lab results ended up getting delayed because of that. So that leads to the first change that we should have done. And what we should have done is immediately when the cancer was diagnosed, strongly requested a biopsy and a lab to identify markers on the cancer for newer treatments and specific targeting treatments. Not all cancers respond to such medicines, but we found out there was another medicine, so there should have been 2 additional treatments to chemo, which would have helped shrink the tumor. And it should have been added from the beginning. Maybe we would have not had to do surgery, but this would have been, we could have had those targeted treatments for 5 months instead of only, I think we only tried it once. And I think that would have made a big difference. At least it's something that I wish we tried. And there could have been other treatments we found as well. I only found that one treatment just by doing my own research. And this also leads to understanding clinical trials. Not all hospitals and treatment centers will have access to all clinical trials. They're going to have access to only clinical trials that they're running normally or partner organizations. If the biopsy doesn't come back with markers for known treatments, you should ask your oncologist for clinical trials or a referral to a clinical trial. And I hate to just suggest Googling, because you could get really bad advice, because there's other treatments that just don't affect cancer, like bee stings, acupuncture, juicing. They might make you feel better. Probably not the bee stings, maybe acupuncture, but juicing may help you feel better. It's not going to stop the cancer. And there's some other treatments that may help you feel better. So I'm not saying don't do those, but don't depend on that to stop the cancer. But at that point, if they say they don't have any clinical trials, you need to start reaching out to other medical centers. You do want to maintain a good relationship with your first doctor, and don't put them on the defensive. If you ask the wrong way, you may put them on the defensive. Or sometimes they just may not think about it. Maybe they do have access to partner organizations. So it's something you have to ask about. But you don't want to burn any bridges, because you're still probably going to have them be your doctor through at least part of the process. And then the second thing we really should have done is ask for more imaging to get the specific location of the tumors. I think this would have also shown us that the cancer had spread, and instead of scheduling it, that surgery, which ended up not being able to be done, we could have identified that earlier, and we would have known, hey, we really, really need to start looking for other treatment options, either chemo or additional things to chemo. So ideally, the targeted or additional therapies and the chemo should have slowed down or reversed the growth of the cancer before the surgery. But even if you exactly identify the location, monitoring the tumor with imaging is crucial. And so you should also do follow-up imaging, even if whether it's spread more or not, you need to know where it is, and you also need to keep tracking that. You can't just say, okay, well, we don't think it's spread, so we're going to schedule surgery months away. So I mean, that needs to be monitored if the surgery is delayed or if it's not scheduled for in the near future. So I'm going to go over again kind of a recap, but also hit on some other points that I didn't bring up. So again, you want to immediately request lab testing for markers for targeted therapies or other non-chemotherapies, and get those started as soon as you can. There may be questions of whether the insurance covers it, but you got to think outside the box. I've seen people do GoFundMe's to get that, but you don't know how much it costs until you make sure that those are available. And the labs can take a while, so you need to know that right away. You need to know that as soon as there's a cancer diagnosis. And sometimes you may be able to skip chemo completely, but other times you have to add that treatment to chemo. If your cancer treatment center will not get that lab, you need to go somewhere else. You can't accept that, be polite, but you have to go somewhere else. You need to get those labs done to find out what your treatment options are. What would be a plan B in case surgery doesn't work, for instance. You can't wait for that after the fact that surgery doesn't work. And again, number 2, you have to make sure you know exactly where the tumors are. You need to get additional and periodic imaging to see if it's progressing. And again, if they won't do that, you have to go somewhere else. You have to go to another center that will do that, because you need to know if it's spread before you can do surgery. And that was actually my third note. Monitoring the growth with additional imaging, because you need to know the progress. So I combined those numbers. Consider all options when deciding if you should postpone surgery. So in this case, postponing the surgery, in case for some reason you forget to tell them, hey, we need to know more, we need to figure out where they're at. In this case, postponing surgery also delayed those lab results. try to reach out to people. Number 5, try to reach out to people who work in oncology. My mom's cousin gave us some advice. My cousin also gave me some advice about this. The treatment center may be very specialized in certain types of cancer, so you need to make sure, because in our case they were really great with her first cancer, but it looked like this wasn't their specialty for the second type of cancer, and they may not have, again, access to all the clinical trials. If they're a specialty cancer hospital, they may have clinical trials for some, but they're guaranteed not to have clinical trials to everything. Also note, there may be some things that are not clinical trials. You may look at the programs called Right to Try and expanded access medications. These are not fully approved by the FDA, and they may have been, this may have been after the clinical trial or before, but you can ask your doctor about Right to Try drugs and expanded access programs. Number 7, don't assume somebody else is doing the research or doing the extra work to find other treatments. And even if they are, the best case scenario is you may find some other medications that could be added that your other family member did not. So don't be afraid to do your own research, even if somebody else said they are. Try to get access to nccn.org. That's November Charlie Charlie November.org, or ask someone with medical knowledge or oncology knowledge to try to get access to that, because they may be able to understand it more or already have access. And of course, not all cancers are treatable, so you may have to accept that, and you spend as much time with your loved ones, and spend time now before there's a cancer diagnosis. You may be able to buy time with a lot of these cancer treatments, and some of these aren't cures, they're just treatments that buy you time. But no matter what, we won't be here forever. Your loved ones won't be here forever. And cancer is a moving target, and especially ones at stage 4, those are going to become a lot harder to treat. So make sure you're spending quality time with your loved ones and your family. And ideally, I really hope you're just watching this for informational purposes. I hope nobody in your family has cancer right now. But I do hope it helps you if they do. And it's important for you also to get screened. A lot of times it's genetic, and if one of your family members has a type of cancer, you should, there's going to be schedules for when everybody should get cancer tested. But if you have a family member or a history of multiple people having that similar type of cancer, then you want to get screened for that cancer earlier, maybe 10 years earlier than what the government recommends. Because the earlier the cancer is detected, the higher the chances for survival. And just remember, your doctors are human, and they might forget to offer you options. Don't take it personally, and don't personally attack them. Approach it with the team effort, and it's a tough thing to go through no matter what. And so I hope this will be a resource to you. And feel free to comment if you have in the video, if you know of anything else that I should have said. And again, I can't give you medical advice, but just trying to give you lessons learned from our experience.